So good evening, everyone. It's really good to have you here. Almost full house. So we have Rafael Grohmann here in flesh, assistant professor at media studies with focus on critical platform and data studies at the University of Toronto, editor of Platform and Society, widely published, very prolific in terms of data work-led AI governance, but actually, to me, a spark of joy in the academic field. Rafael is bringing a very sparkly, shiny perspective into the work and the field. He's moving beyond critique to actually look into action-based research, and something incredibly refreshing in the field that I particularly welcome. So super happy to have you here. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Paloma. Thank you for having me. Can you hear me well? Yeah. Great. I am Gemini, and today my birthday. Whoa, thank you. And because of it, I have so hard time focused on only one project. So I have a lot of projects. And I will talk about only one project this evening. Obviously, later you can ask me about other things. And this project is also topic of my time here at Zemke, is worker-led AI governance and cultural industries. So firstly, what I mean by worker-led AI governance in all these AI governance spaces. First, I don't strongly believe in the notion of AI governance. I use more as a provocation than exactly something I would really like to put my fingers in epistemological ways. Or why or how. For me, sometimes, or the dominant framework for AI governance, at maximum takes a Habermasian approach for governance, as each stakeholder has a voice and has a seat, and everybody will reach a consensus based on this governance approach. A lot of this AI governance approach are more top-down. And when I say this is more worker than really trying to emphasize a lot of these epistemological foundations, my question is, do workers have a voice in AI governance debates? Sometimes in a lot of AI governance debates, we listen policymakers, we listen some of the worker representatives, but talking about workers leading discussions about how AI is employed, deployed, imagined, and refused at workplace and beyond the workplace, it's something that not necessarily we listen them. So this is for me why this concept is important. Not in the more epistemological ways, possibly, but in political ways, how we should put workers at the front of these discussions around AI governance. And so I define worker-led AI governance as the way different worker collectives, whether formal unions, associations, social movements, cooperatives, and how they have a voice in the way AI is deployed, imagined, refused, or apply in the workplace. And if they have a voice, what is the worker power around it? Or if they have power to change things or not. The case I'm focused on more for this evening is based on my research for a project called Creative Labor and Critical Futures based at the University of Toronto, focused on cultural industries as at the front of these battles. Because how cultural workers broadly define actors, screenwriters, journalists, they are in the front of this battle around generative AI nowadays. So I'm part of this observatory led by Professor Phoebe Moore, who used to be a Zenke Fellow as well some years ago. And I led the Brazil team of this observatory for AI policy, observatory for world of work. And one of the things we learned from this observatory is that a lot of AI policies, especially in the case I led in Brazil, they don't focus on world of work. So there's a lack of, in general, of AI policies focused on workplace. And so for me, talking about artists or cultural workers or media workers or cultural workers broadly defined is something important. 2 months ago, we launched a tracker or a database of worker mobilizations around AI in arts, culture, and media, or in this cultural sector. Nowadays, with more than 100 mobilizations, from coalitions to formal unions around the world. And this is updated in an evolving base. There is a QR code here if you want to access. This is a public resource and can be used in classroom, can be used in any places. We always receive feedback on how to improve that. And after 2 months of the launch, so the launch was part of the method. So we receive a lot of feedback during 2 months. We correct, we fix some mistakes, we updated or added other cases. And after 2 months, my PhD student, Helena Wright, and we stopped it in order to write something about it in a landscape. So I will present you what are the data from this tracker, knowing that possibly there are some limitations, like cases we didn't find, probably because of language limitations of our team or something like that. And we can talk about these limitations later. So there is a geographic distribution of this mobilization. This mobilization could be from a strike to a single protest or a letter directed and published and on the website. So we can see that the majority of these manifestations are in North America and Europe, with some presence in Asia and Pacific and Latin America, but only 2 cases in Africa. United States, Canada, and UK are the leaders here, and the Anglophone world. Film and televisions or screen industries in general are the majority of the subject of this topic, with something in music, in writing, publishing, and visual arts. And we can define more or less the profiles of each of this subsector. So that's something interesting in these profiles, in the language they use in these documents or in these actions. First is about visual artists. Visual artists, actually, they are pioneers in this field because they talked about it before the launch of ChatGPT. Because it's because of DALL-E, they started to talk about Gen AI before Hollywood writers, for instance. And I would say, this is not the right word, but among all these workers, they are the most radical in the language, because they say AI is a theft, they're stealing our job. They use a lot of these words to say we reject, we refuse AI in these bold terms. Probably the visual artists are the case here with the most bold terms in relation to Gen AI. Voice acting, I'm kind of biased here because I'm doing close research with them right now, but from this sample, they reach the most global south presence in the sample is 48. Almost half of them are from the global south. And this is also explained because of the value chain in the cultural industries, because how voice actors in Mexico or in Brazil or in India, they depend on movies shot in US or Canada and UK, and they translate to their local communities. Writing publishing, like journalism is a more ethical language. We want to use AI in an ethical way. So this ethical framework is more used by journalists. And film and television is the most institutionalized sector, and with most bargaining power, especially inspired by the writer strike in Hollywood in 2023. This is a kind of temporal or timeline. When was the first time they published something about Gen AI? So these 6 cases in 2022 was all visual artists. And then there is a peak in 2023 with the ChatGPT launch, but also with the strikes in the US with actors and screenwriters. About repertoires of collective action, surprisingly or not, or because in our data collection we also had a generous framework about what we count as mobilization, not all of these mobilization are related to collective bargaining or agreements. Actually, it's only the 5th repertoire of collective actions. Most of them, they do policy and lobbying, or they do campaigns, awareness, or petitions as something to start to mobilize. Or public statements, open letters, manifestos, coalition, collective organizing in beyond these formal unions. They are more, they have more numbers than exactly the formal collective bargaining. And for me, it's also an interesting finding to not look only to the formal unions in when we talk about worker-led AI governance, or even a strike or protest is not part of the majority of this data. What are the dominant claims these workers do in relation to AI? The majority is about compensation and consent and copyright. This kind of language about compensation and consent is really something circulated across the data. Obviously, we have to do more qualitative research, and my bias or my understanding is there's some possibility that the way they understand compensation and or consent in each sector might vary, depends on the sector, depends on the position and also the value chain. And then you have copyright, intellectual property, job loss and displacement, transparency, disclose, training data, and so on. And credit is only in a 8th or 9th position. And there's a lot of conversation around what they call 3 C's, which is consent, compensation, and credit. But actually credit, they appear more in the last year than copyright, for instance. What are the targets of these worker AI mobilizations? Most of them are government or policymakers. Probably also because of the way the sample were built, it's more about government and then AI companies, studios, and platforms, but they are trying to convince policymakers about their point, or sometimes even the broader or the broad public or the broad audience, like talking to fandom or talking to their own public. So this is the first eye we had on the tracker. Feel free to do your own analysis or even to use in classroom, like case studies or something like that. But this is the first overview. There's at least one invisibility that there are only 2 cases in Africa. Both of them are located in South Africa. Obviously, possibly there's something related to our language limitations to track these cases. But also, there is a postdoc in our team called Goldwyn Simon doing ethnographic fieldwork in Nigeria, in Nollywood, in the screen industries in Nigeria. And his initial findings pointed out about the excitement around AI in Nigerian screen industry that they don't want to do protests around it. So this is possibly one insight. And another insight from it is, instead of only focused on what we can talk as paradigmatic cases, we should pay attention to what happened beyond Hollywood. So this is the first part of my talk. The second part, I will contradict myself what I just said. I will delve into two cases because I am Brazilian, and it's so interesting. I did my first research fieldwork in the US in this research, so this kind of Latin American framework, even when you go to Hollywood. During the writer's strike in Hollywood in 2023, we did a public live stream with some of worker organizers in Writers Guild of America in the US to talk about why you are striking. And then we started a research, and this was the first paper where we defined worker-led AI governance. It was published last year. And we started to talk about power resources. So these two cases I will present is more delve into these power resources. Because as a Brazilian working with social movements and collectives there in Latin America for a lot of years, and actually my first international conference was here at Zenki 10 years ago. And I didn't know about the power of unions in Hollywood. And it's something probably you can see how a lot of awards in Hollywood, like the precedents of Oscars, they are produced by unions. The Writers Guild or the Actors Guild, SAG-AFTRA, or Directors Guild, a lot of them are related to these unions. So unlike a lot of cultural industries around the world, in Hollywood you have a more structured and unionized workplace. I don't know if you follow Oscars. I was following because of Brazil, actually. And Michael B. Jordan won Best Actor in the Actor Union Award. And he said, my dream when I became an actor was to have a card of the union. So it's something, when you talk about the unions disappearing, and it's hard to imagine there in Hollywood. So for me, it was a kind of surprise to understand that how the worker power of screenwriters and actors, they did the first big strike around Gen AI or they did a big strike after 20, 30 years. And they stopped the production, or how they did that. So we talked here in three specific points of worker power. One is the institutional one. They have a long tradition of bargaining, organizing. They talked to me, Rafael, we have here the old guy who did the strike 30 years ago, talking to us, how was the strike 30 years ago? After every technology launched, VHS, DVD, we were fighting for our rights, especially around intellectual property, about authorship, and about our own rights on it. So talking about or struggling around technology is not a new thing. But actually, and they talking to me, this strike was not supposed to be about Gen AI. We had other things or other urgent things. One, we are fighting for more gender representation and racial representation in Hollywood, to have more diverse stories and to have more diverse workforce as well. And we are fighting for streaming residuals. But actually, we learned that Gen AI was gaining traction. And with Gen AI, we will have less diversity. We have less intellectual property. So we decided in a tactical way to put Gen AI in the front. But it was not our main idea. But so they have this institutional power. And they have what we call structural power or economic power to stop the production for more than 200 days. It's not all workers who have this power. And they have a strong discursive power as well. I am actor in Hollywood, I'm saying that stopping this production, and a lot of people saying, oh, I didn't know that Hollywood workers are workers. I think they're only like celebrities or artists. There was a case in Brazil, it actually is the current partner of Shawn Mendes. It's a Brazilian actress, and she did her first movie in Hollywood. She went to a famous talk show, and the host said, do you want to talk about your first movie in Hollywood? I cannot, because they are on strike. If I talk about the movie, I'm fucked. So people started to realize that is a thing. And they have this discursive power to talk to the audience. And they have also, because they are writers in Hollywood, they had powerful wording on the street, like especially AI is not art, and AI is soulless. This was the two main words during this strike. So this is a pragmatic case, but also is a rare combination of having specific power resources available for the workers at that time. So it's not replicable in all the scenes. I had here the second gossip of the day. The first was Shawn Mendes dating this Brazilian actress. The second gossip is because of the tracker. I sent an email to this guy, Christopher Nolan. I'm trying, because Christopher Nolan is the current president of Director Guilds of America. Or why Hollywood is putting these famous people to lead their guilds and unions in this specific time. Because also of the importance of the discursive or communicative power. The current president of SAG-AFTRA, the Actors Guild, is Sean Astin, who did Lord of Rings and who was killed in the second season of Stranger Things. So is another famous actor. Also, I email him as well. Radio silence, but at some point I would do an event with both of them. Or you realize that my dream is leave academia and become a star. So Christopher Nolan is the president of the Directors Guild of America. There was an interesting case as well, a coalition led by this millennial actor, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, with Natasha Lyonne, called Creator Coalition on AI, and was signed by people like Kate Blanchett, Guillermo del Toro, and Rafael Grohmann. And you can see on on their website, it was more like there's a battle in Hollywood right now. The third gossip of the day is a side research, but there's something relevant here. I did an interview with a guy from a startup in Hollywood, and they said we did the first Gen AI for video in Hollywood using only licensed data, only trained data. And I did interview with them, and off record, this person said, actually, there is a battle in Hollywood, because even the youngers or these people, even when they are more, it's like fair washing or ethical washing, they are in the front of the progressive forces in Hollywood. Because he said, I have meetings with Oscar winners of Best Director every month here. They don't care about licensed data. They only said, okay, can you do this beautiful scene I imagine in my mind? If you can do, I don't care about how you get there. And a lot of studios funding a lot of AI slop. So how to locate also worker-led AI governance and worker power. So even in the paradigmatic case, we're not talking about something that is more comparable to Germany game, another 7-1, than exactly Curacao in Spain yesterday. So this is something important. Even in Canada, and I'm living there for 3 years, in an interesting country because they depend a lot in the US, but especially now with Trump, they are not US. And we are different. But in terms of worker organizing, they replicate a lot of strategies from the US guilds. Especially because of the geographical distribution, the East Side, like New York offices and Toronto offices, they have similar guilds or same guild with different offices. In the case of Communication Workers of America, for instance. And I don't know if you know, Toronto is called, and Toronto and Vancouver are called Hollywood North because a lot of films are shot in the cities. Another reason for me to move to there, in order to become a star. A lot of films are shot at, my university gains a lot of money with Hollywood, like just renting places for locations. But it's a different scenario because there, Canada is not exactly US. And especially we have the Francophone, you know, have a different traditions. I'm calling it the Canadian misfit because Canada, it cannot be equal to US, it's not Europe, it's something else. It's not Global South, definitely. And we did some interviews with the Writers Guild of Canada, or Writers Guild of Canada. And one of the quotes from this research is not published yet. They said, unlike US, we depend on public policies. So our bargain power is not only about the market, but we depend and we have to talk to governments and policymakers all the time. So a lot of our own manifestations or mobilizations are related to the government. So even in a country like Canada, they launched some resources in the union, like the Directors Guild of Canada launched a tracker about the tax ecological impact or how Gen AI is affecting environment in film production. This is an interesting resource. So just to highlight some of the interesting cases in the cultural industries in Canada with this Canadian misfit. And I'm doing research after Hollywood, doing research with voice actors, especially in Brazil. Because I realized after this strike how a fair agreement in one location, let's say in the global north, can uneven affect workers in other parts of the world. So talking about the value chains. At some point, unions in the US started to think, oh, Will Smith or Nicolas Cage, you can allow Gen AI to dub your voice in 7 languages and you'll be compensated for it using that language of compensation. But actually, what the US Union can frame as a fair agreement in their local way will affect voice actors in countries like Brazil, India, or even like Japan and other countries who depend on it. So this was one of the reasons I started to research with voice actors. And the Brazilian voice actors were the first worker collective among all the worker collective in Brazil to add a sentence in the AI bill proposal in the country to say, we are here, we will be disappeared and they launched a campaign. So this is a news story from Rest of World. If you don't know this news venue, I really recommend. Voice actors fight to save their livelihoods and local cultures from Hollywood's AI push. And actually here in Germany, there is also some pushback on it. There are two voice actor associations here in Germany. One of them is boycotting Netflix over AI training concerns and all the training of the data training of their voices. Similarly to what happened with game performers in the US. There's nothing in their contract, and they never gave consent, and suddenly they're using their voices to train AI. So we wrote the second paper in this work-led AI governance, I don't know if it's trilogy or something, dubbed over the struggles of Brazilian voice actors towards a work-led AI governance. And we found a different story compared to Hollywood. Because actually the voice actors don't have a formal union. Historically, time by time, they changed their informal association. This is a kind of weak institutional power. They don't have the power to stop the production, but they still have a discursive power. And they launched a movement 2 years ago called Dublagem Viva, which in Portuguese means live dubbing. So they launched a campaign saying, I am the voice of your favorite character. I did Dragon Ball Z, I did Naruto, I did a lot of other characters, and I'm here to ask for your support. So they had this coalition with fandom, and they could launch something big in Brazil to people talk about the importance of not replacing their voices for AI, saying, I care about your voice. It's so interesting for me. I do research with labor and technology for more than 10 years, but like I research with delivery workers or something. And there's something so interesting with voice actors. I don't know if it's similar here in Germany, that you recognize the voice of these people, even when you don't know their faces. They're not famous. If they are around here, you don't care. But if you listen their voices, it's something related to nostalgia, to your own, like to your favorite animation or to a favorite game. So there's something here related to affect, and is a discursive power in something in not the same way as Hollywood is doing. But because they don't have institutional power and economic power, they have to do some alliances. So the importance here is what we call associational power. They started to do alliances with other sectors. One of the cases they did alliances is with illustrators and digital and visual artists. Is this a new association from Brazil called Unidad, which means a national union of digital artists, who are from a different sector, but they have power to go to the local government, to go to the national government and say, we want to be listened in these public hearings. And they started to convince famous musicians or famous actors to go to the public listen in the National Assembly, to go to the Minister of Culture, or even partner with us in academia to say, Rafa, can you go to the Minister of Culture and say some things on our behalf, or send this manifesto to the minister? Or how to use this possibility of having associations or coalitions as a way to try to leverage their power. And part of this discussions, so this is the president of the Brazilian Voice Actors Association, and he's famous for doing the Beast of the Beauty and Beast for doing Doctor Strange and in a lot of other characters. And he used to be a famous actor for Brazilian TV shows in the 90s and 2000s. So I knew him when I was 11 years old or something, which is also interesting during the research process. And so knowing about this importance of discursive power and associational power, these days, it was December, my chair called me, Rafa, we have some remaining dollars here, and we have to spend them until next week. It's about public engagement, knowledge mobilization, science communication. And actually no one wants to use this money until next week. Do you want to use these thousands of dollars? Yeah, let's do something. So we send money to the Brazilian Voice Actor Associations, and we will be launching a campaign. The campaign actually is ready. I showed the workshop last week. We hired two famous voice actors. These two, the guy dubbed Superman for like this old Superman animation, and the women did also important local TV shows or something. And we did this campaign together, like we co-wrote the script and something, my University of Toronto team and the voice actors. And this campaign is about cultural identity, the importance of cultural identities and the human voices and the importance of AI regulation. And we'll be launching this campaign June 29. So my last thing I did in my hotel before coming here was approving the press release to send to the media tomorrow. And the hardest thing we did is they say, Rafa, please use the power of universities to reach out to local voice actors associations in other countries to say that we want to partner with them. We want to have a campaign featuring other voice actors associations around the world. So we got partnership with voice actors associations in the US, Canada, Chile, Germany, the Guild, and India and Japan. And at some point of the video, one of them said, we are not the only voices. We have many voices around the world sharing the same messages. So my voice can have other voices. So there is a line saying in English, in German, in Japanese, in Hindi, saying, this is my voice in German, this is my voice in Hindi, dubbed by local voice actors. And we are asking them, and I'm asking for more money from my department, to have another campaign, let's say, is started by the German Voice Actor Association, featuring Brazilian one in German, and so on and so forth. So it's a way for us to practicing a little bit what's happening. So this is an example from the quantitative data of the tracker, from trying to analyze the worker power, or if they have or not power, in which sense, and what can be our own intervention in the field. I don't have any idea how this campaign will be received in Brazil, but we will try our best. So we will continue to do research on it in the next few years. We just got this, probably, I cannot promise this is the final gossip, but we just got a new grant for the next 3 years to do a comparison between Brazil and Canada with screenwriters, visual artists, voice actors, and game workers. And we are applying this power resources approach and also action research in order to have shared learnings. This is my final message. We talk a lot about AI literacy, And here, what we are seeing, how we can, instead of talking about the top-down AI literacy or you should be better with AI, we have to learn with different contexts in different sectors. But even inside of cultural industries, they feel isolated or not knowing what the others are doing. So when we launched the tracker, we heard a lot about that. We didn't know that the Directors Guild of Canada launched this tracker. So there's not shared resources to also leverage their power. So, and also the campaign is showing this for us, and how probably in the next few years, my research in theoretical level will be how to think about the pedagogies around the worker power, or how to theorize what is, how to learn with different contexts in putting workers at the front of this AI governance debate. Thank you so much.